The wacky world of MultimediaJay.
Alright, what is up everybody? Welcome back to my Where Are We Starting From series of videos about my game collection as I continue the whole secondhand, schmeckenhand thing and, talk about pickups if I ever want to go retro game shopping or game hunting or game deal hunting or something like that. So, today we are looking at, or in this video, I should say, I'm going to film more than one of these. I got to get these done because I got stuff coming in that I'll have to make videos about later too, so getting a bit of a backlog of stuff going here. Today we're going to be talking about what I'd basically call the bridge console. PlayStation 2, a console that is basically, it was the console when I was in college. I mean, yeah, sure, we had the Xbox and the GameCube, but when you ran into a friend in college who had one of those consoles, instead of, get the Slimmy out of here, instead of one of these, it was an event. When I saw a GameCube on campus, it was an event. When I saw an Xbox on campus, it was an event. So it's not like it was really all about the hardware or getting the best hardware or something like that. PlayStation 2 was just that iconic of a console and pretty much defined a generation right after the turn of the millennium. So when I went off to college, I didn't bring any of my consoles with me because I didn't have a TV and there wasn't much room in the dorm rooms, of course, so I became a PC gamer, and I still am a PC gamer to this day. PC is my high-end platform of choice these days. And it all started back when I was trying to save space in the dorms. I would go out to the local Kmart or something and pick up their bargain bin PC games when they were on sale for 20 bucks or less or something along those lines. So buy a lot of PC games, and there was a time when, actually the Silver Bullet, when I first built it, was one of the reasons I went with this case was because once upon a time, there actually were working USB ports in the front, so I was thinking of buying USB controllers and having this function as a console, even though it's a little big. So maybe I was a little ahead of the times with trying to make a big PC like this act like a game box, but I totally destroyed my USB ports back then. So yeah, nowadays we got talk of like the Steam machines and people trying to make hybrid PC devices that are used for gaming in the living room and stuff, trying to beat Gabe Newell and his buddies at their own game and stuff like that. So obviously I've gone through two PS2s, although both of these still work actually. The fat PS2 I actually picked up used. I did not have this console in college. I went straight through to graduation with only my cartridge consoles and brought them home with me after calling home for them. I originally didn't have a TV on campus, didn't want to lug a big heavy tube out there, had a friend give me a tube TV, and I wound up junking it less than a year later because the picture was just shot on the thing and it was way heavier. I mean, my big tube monitor that I had for my computer at the time was lighter than this television was. It was just awful. So we actually wound up junking that TV eventually. So we're talking summer of junior year when I really started to play console games again. So early 2000s, didn't really play console games that were actually my own for most of the time I gamed in college. It was either PC games or a friend had one of these and I just played along with Grand Theft Auto or something like that. Afterwards, though, once that college stuff was all over and I started working a decent job and started getting some money that I could spend on fun stuff, finally, and decent amounts of fun stuff, the PlayStation 2 was going out of style because PS3 was coming out and the Xbox 360 and stuff, so I wound up getting this fat PS2 from a GameStop, interestingly enough, used. So, picked one of these up, and this right here, I believe, it was either this or the GameCube, was my first post-college console, getting back into console gaming. One of the interesting things about console gaming back then for me is that because I missed most of the good stuff on PS2, I can still play PS2 games and have them be new experiences. So it's been pretty fun lately, going into GameStop and getting some used PS2 games that they're trying to get rid of for a couple of bucks and something like that. So PS2 is probably the single biggest post-cartridge game collection that I have right now, and I mean all of the secondhand stores around here have PS2. If they have video games at all, odds are they have at least some PS2 games. PS2 seems to be the console that's popping up in the secondhand shops now as people get rid of their old systems and games and stuff, or they move on to PS3, PS4, etc. So this fatty, if you want to call it that, this fat PS2 is actually just perfectly fine. I tossed around the idea of maybe getting a trade-in value for it, but considering what the cost of these consoles has gone to in recent years, I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to keep it and use it, and until it stops working. So it'll kind of be like my backup PS2, or if say I can get my dad hooked on Atari Anthology or something like that, and he wants to borrow this system, he can. But it's not as power efficient as the Slim, so I don't really prefer it too much. Instead, I have this little bad boy right here, the nice little Slim that I picked up new several years ago when I found out that these things were more power efficient, started games faster, and all kinds of other stuff. So I actually like the PS2 Slim. Definitely a pretty decent device, although it is kind of small for a console, but it does the trick. Although in the early batches of these things had some issues with reliability, where sometimes they would burn out in less than a year, the laser would die or something along those lines. But considering these do have some more moving parts than the cartridge consoles I grew up with, I think it's best that I hang on to both of these in case. So if the Slim dies, just use the fat one while looking for a deal on something else if there are any deals to be had. So that is our hardware. This is what I think of when I think of PS2 nowadays. And the thing with PS2 is, I think it's a perfectly fine system to still be playing these days. Yeah, it's dated, it's several years old, but I mean, it's not like Nintendo 64 with the 20-year-old anti-aliasing making your visuals look horrible. I mean, most of these games look fine going out through a component cable, it's just that they're in standard def. It's kind of like watching DVDs instead of Blu-rays, except these have experiences and content and stuff. All right, let's start going through some games here. Actually, no, before we start with Destruction Derby Arenas, you're going to see that the PlayStation 2 collection probably has the single best looking set of cases, no matter how old the games are and how used they are. So I probably have, even if they're used games, my PS2 games probably look better than just about every other platform's games that I have in the entire collection. And there's a reason for that. That reason is buried right here in my closet. This is a wholesale lot that I picked up from BRE Software's website, wholesalevideogamelots.com, back when the site was still around. They used to sell replacement game cases in bulk. So I got like a box of 28 replacement PS2 cases in like new condition. They got little dust over the years. But these are PS2 cases. I got like 28 of them for $11 back then. Nowadays they sell these things at retail prices, so it'd be like $3 a case, which is outrageous. I don't know if they were losing too much money or something like that, but perfectly fine PS2 style cases with slots for memory cards and everything. Bought a wholesale lot. The only time I've actually bought a video game wholesale lot for any system. And the ones in the back are the cases they've replaced with GameStop stickers on them and crap like that. So I'm eventually going to Goog on these to see how good I can make them. Some of these cases were picked from new games that didn't sell. Some of them were games that they cleaned up really well. I want to see if I can clean those in the back. So, yep, this wholesale game lot of replacement cases is why you're going to see the PS2 games looking better than just about every other generation of games that I have, even if they're secondhand GameStop garbage. Right, time for a little bit of software now, shall we? Now we're talking about cases and hardware and stuff like that. So let's start off with Destruction Derby Arenas. Before we go into that, though, I should also mention that the extreme majority of my PS2 collection is secondhand. There are very few games that I bought new. It's an event if I have a PS2 game that's new, because for the most part I missed this generation. So, Destruction Derby Arenas, not complete. Not complete, unfortunately. No manual, and stuff like that. But disc is in decent shape. Got this largely due to... Well, that doesn't work very well. Got this largely... Yeah, sports up 20 players online. Yeah, like the online's still working. This is a middle-of-the-road game. I got it largely because I liked Destruction Derby 64 back in the day on N64, so this is another Destruction... Oh, I gotta do something about the glare. This is another Destruction Derby game in the series, and it's a pretty decent game, but it's nothing too exciting. It's a far cry from Gran Turismo. And I'm not trying to make console game name jokes here, so Yeah, Destruction Derby Arenas, it's playable, and it's got it cheap secondhand. Final Fantasy XII, one of the few first-hand games that I have in here. This sucker was a Walmart... I can't do that with the glare. This sucker was a Walmart special back when Walmart was liquidating their PlayStation 2 stuff to make room for PlayStation 3. So they're complete and everything, decent, and this is not a replacement case. It is first-hand. It's the first... first-hand, first owner, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, this glare is going to be a huge problem with these disc games, isn't it? FF12. Anyways, it's FF12. I saw it on Tech TV back in the day. Trying to find a spot to put the games that I've gone over where they're not going to tip over after about 20 of them. Dragon Quest VIII, Journey of the Cursed King, with the demo of FF12 on it. I'm kind of going backwards here. Is this... No, that's the manual for the demo. I don't actually have the manual for this, so it's not totally complete, FF12. So I got FF12 manuals for the demo, for the full game and the demo. Anyways, love the Dragon Quest series, also known as Dragon Warrior Stateside, and this game I actually saw on Tech TV back when I was in college. I was like, hey, and they were like, hey, you know, there's new Dragon Warrior games and stuff like that, and never played very far into this game for whatever reason. I got to get through more of my backlog, which most of my backlog consists of these kinds of games. But yeah, this one I think it was secondhand, but it was something. Oh, this glare thing. Okay, we'll just flip it and stuff like that. Pretty decent. It's Dragon Quest. It's an RPG. Has some retro sound effects in it, and it still looks a-okay. Even though it's PlayStation 2. State of emergency. This is a game that I picked up. It's complete too, so even more laughable. This is a game that I picked up because I had so many friends that had this game in college. They'd have a bad day or something. They'd come home from class, and the class wasn't something they particularly liked, so they'd fire this up, go into mayhem mode, and basically it's a game about causing mayhem in crowded malls and stuff like that. And I had some friends in college I had lots of friends in college who had PS2s, and nearly all of them would have this game for blowing off steam. There is a story to this game, but I've never seen anybody actually play through story mode. It usually was just messing around, kind of like how Grand Theft Auto often is. Midway Arcade Treasures, one of many compilation games that I pick up, complete, interestingly enough, one of many compilation games that I picked up on PS2 to save me a lot of retro game buying and virtual console / Steam type buying and stuff like that. I have just about all of these compilations except the Namco one, which is on its way, and one of the reasons why I have to finish up this series. So Midway Arcade Treasures, again, secondhand, like most of my collection is. And Midway games, this is actually, I find it to be the least enjoyable because of the interface for selecting games. There isn't enough text. They got this kind of Egyptian theme, like you're searching through ancient hieroglyphics or something like that for some kind of ancient treasure, something along those lines. It just takes forever, there's no text, and it's really hard to figure out what you've selected until you actually start the game. So, Midway, it's my least favorite of the compilation games, but I prefer compilation games over getting gouged on retro games any day, especially when these compilations can be dirt cheap. Alright, speaking of compilation games, Capcom Classics Collection. Another complete manual and disc, blah blah blah. Complete and very interesting. It's got some games like Ghosts and Goblins, stuff like that. Around the time that people were talking about how people can't... There's something on YouTube back then where people were talking about how younger gamers, newer gamers, couldn't handle challenging games like the Ghosts and Goblins series back in the day, and the Virtual Console Super Ghouls and Ghosts came out, so all those super hard platformers, people were trying them and stuff like that. I picked this up too because it had a bunch of Street Fighters. It has a bunch of Street Fighters on it, so yeah, so it saves me some Virtual Console purchases and some hunting in the SNES areas and stuff like that. So that's what I like about some of these games that we have out nowadays that have bonus games on them. It saves you some purchases, especially if they're older games too. Like, for example, I will not be looking for a certain game on the N64 because of Rampage Total Destruction. Is it Rampage or is it Rampage? I'll just do Rampage. It's Rampage. Rampage Total Destruction. Complete Complete. I love the series. I used to play the NES version all the time with when I went over friends' houses who had it. There was one time I went on just like a rampage spree, just binge mode, playing as either George or Lizzie, and I just went through the whole game. And I think after you beat it back then, it would just loop back to the beginning. You just play it again. So that much of an appetite for destroying cities as monster movie monsters. So this picks up right where the series left off, and it also includes, I believe it includes the original. Yeah, it includes the original and Rampage World Tour, which was on the N64 as well. I rented the N64 version. I think these are the arcade versions though that it has. It doesn't have the NES one. So lots of monsters. I still play this on a regular basis. It's a blow-off steam game for me, kind of like State of Emergency was to my friends in college. And I knew people with the other Rampage games earlier on that would use these as a way to blow off steam after a long, hard day at work. Anywho, the most recent acquisition is next. Atari Anthology, in great shape, complete, and I talked about this on my last pickup video, so a little redundant here, but the big thing I've run into since getting this game is that some Atari games don't work well without the original controllers. It just doesn't feel the same if you don't have a joystick, which makes me wonder if any company ever made a retro Atari-style joystick for PS2, or if there's a way to wire up a replica joystick from a replica Atari joystick to work with a PlayStation 2 cord. You know, I'd be willing to buy a broken PS2 controller and wire up the cord to something resembling an Atari joystick if I could find a way to get that working here. But the problem is I wouldn't be able to use it on this game because you need your other buttons to navigate through the menus and change the difficulty mode, stuff like that. So, oh well. So maybe make some kind of freak show combo control where I splice together one of the buttons from the PS2 controller with the action buttons the buttons from the PS2 controller, relevant buttons I should say, with the buttons coming out of an Atari joystick, and have like a daisy chain controller so I can select my games with the PS2 controller and switch to the joystick to actually play them. Unfortunately, there are some games that just aren't the same, like the paddle games, like Circus Atari. Playing that with a D-pad is rubbish compared to the original analog paddle. So, Atari Anthology, although the problem with this is that when people think of Atari, if you were around when the 2600 was still in regular use as a home console, like I caught the end of it. People whose parents couldn't afford Nintendos would have Ataris. I was one of them with a 7800 at one point. Problem is, this is only Atari games. It's not the famous Namco games like Pac-Man and stuff. That honor is reserved for the Namco Museum game, which I have on the way. Next up, Final Fantasy X, the Final Fantasy game that I missed in college. Not complete, no manual. Not really a big fan of FF10. I don't know why so many people like this. I think Final Fantasy X has the same thing going for it as Final Fantasy VII did. It was the first FF game on a system, and it made a few steps forward tech-wise. So it was the first, I think, fully voiced FF game on the PlayStation 2. So it gained some fans because of that. But I didn't like the story. The morbid, death-obsessed story about how death rules Spira and stuff like that reminds me too much of the Final Fantasy movie, which was influenced negatively by, I think it was Sakaguchi's mother passed away, and he was all hungover on death from losing his mother back around the time this stuff was coming out. So, yeah. Plus, I didn't like how Titus was too, or Tidus. Some people like saying Tidus, but I didn't like how the game's protagonist was so whiny. I mean, I've seen cartoons starring teenagers in the 80s that were cooler than that guy. I mean, why couldn't that guy have been like, Bill and Ted or something like that, instead of the whiner that he actually was? And on the same note, Final Fantasy X-2. Complete. So, I've heard some people call this the PlayStation 2 chick flick before. And I have this thing complete and not the original FF10. Oh man. But however, I think this was my first experience with disgruntled GameStop employees. See that GameStop sticker there? That's not on the case. Nope. That is on the insert, which means every time you see something like this, that some jackass having a bad day at GameStop had to go out of their way to do this. Got a couple games like this, and they all have one thing in common. They're all from GameStop. One reason why I don't really mess around with GameStop much anymore, but GameStop is so ubiquitous that even if you don't shop at GameStop and you go to like a mom and pop secondhand store, you might see some games that previously wound up at GameStop there that have this very same problem. Okay, that's enough throwing this thing around. One of these days I'll get a hairdryer with a heat setting, put it on like low heat, warm up the glue and take that sticker off hopefully without damaging the insert. But Echo the Dolphin. This is a game that I have because of Classic Game Room, or should I say, The Game Room. The original internet broadcast that they put on YouTube several years ago from back in 2000 before the .com crash. Echo the Dolphin, interesting game, very relaxing. It's one of those games where it's like Endless Ocean on the Wii. Sometimes you play it just to relax. Complete. This is actually the second one of these that I got from GameStop. The first one I had didn't work, and interestingly enough, instead of telling me to send it back, actually I ordered it from ebgames.com, which is now a subsidiary of GameStop, but the first one of these that I received didn't work, and interestingly enough, they told me to destroy the merchandise instead of returning it. Because I guess it wouldn't have been worth it for them to evaluate it or something like that, because it wasn't that expensive of a used game to begin with. So they just sent me another one. This one worked, and I just did the best of the inserts, best of the manuals, and I have this sucker complete now because of that. So yeah, Echo the Dolphin, good stuff. 18-wheeler, American Pro Trucker. This sucker found its way onto the Dreamcast after its days as a coin-op game. The reason why I know about this trucking game is because I've played the coin-op version. What happened was there was this place in the student center at my college that wasn't getting a lot of foot traffic, and so to revamp everything, there used to be a game room that had like a few ping pong tables. To revamp everything, they brought in some new pool tables, new ping pong tables, and some arcade machines, one of whom was the coin-op version of 18-wheeler. Myself and one of my best friends in college, we would have marathons throwing quarters into that thing because it was hilarious playing this game with a big rig style wheel, and I don't know, the two of us were pretty rough around the edges compared to some of the folks we were going to school with, so maybe it's kind of our way of, people joke about how we act like truckers sometime or talk like truckers. And so that was kind of our way of just like laughing at all the jokes about, hey, you should stop acting like a trucker or something like that. 18-wheeler, join the convoy. Unfortunately, this game does not translate very well to a home console. I mean, when you've played the coin-op version, I do have it complete, which is nice, but it's not like this thing's worth all that much anyways. Got it for a couple of bucks. But when you've played the coin-op version of this game with the big truck-style steering wheel and the pedals and the gear shift, and then you go to a thumbstick and automatic transmission, just not the same. This is largely something This is largely something that I have because I enjoyed the coin-op that much. It's kind of like a souvenir of college. Also a souvenir of GameStop. Well, look at the GameStop sticker on the inside on this one, too. Is this like a badge of honor at GameStop that you put a stupid little price sticker on an insert so it's really hard to take off? GameStop. Anyways, Gran Turismo 4, another game that I have because of Classic Game Room. Complete with manual. And Gran Turismo 4, I got this sucker again because of Classic Game Room and the fact that it upscaled to 1080i. So you can actually crank this up to 1080i and pump some pseudo HD out of a PlayStation 2. It's a big reason why I got this. And of course I didn't have my PS3 back then, so I wanted a Gran Turismo game because of all the cars and stuff. And so I played this until GT5 finally came out in complete mode. Gran Turismo 5 was a game that I blew off getting for literally years because the folks behind it wouldn't bother. They released like the equivalent of a demo with only a few tracks, like Preview Edition or something, for like $40. I was like, no, I want the complete one. And I waited until the Game of the Year version finally came out. Until then, I just played the heck out of Gran Turismo 4. It's a game with such a huge learning curve that it makes you want to buy a steering wheel controller just to be able to handle the cars correctly. Ratchet and Clank. Yeah, I've heard of good things about the Ratchet and Clank series. Greatest Hits version. I had a Black Label version that didn't work that I wound up taking back to GameStop. And this is another GameStop special, but this is the Red Label version. Not complete. Only a couple of bucks. I'm not really someone who's really big into reselling video games, so I'm not really concerned that it's not complete. And I still haven't hardly played through this. This is another big part of the backlog. Ah, the infamous backlog. Speaking of backlog, Red Dead Revolver, and I believe this is a PAL cover. Yeah, it's a PAL cover, but this is the NTSC version. I went and just printed off some cover art because this is yet another nowhere near complete GameStop special. So I just printed off some cover art of the PAL version to have something that said Red Dead Revolver on the front instead of that stupid generic GameStop insert. If I ever get my color printer fixed again, I might try and find something in color, but it's funny to have the PAL version and this is NTSC. But I didn't want to have the generic GameStop cover art, which would have just been cheesier. Rygar. Got this, of course, because the NES game of the same name. I also have the arcade game on the Virtual Console. Complete. Got a little past the first stage and stopped playing it. One of these days I have to go back and finish the rest of it. It's interesting. It's kind of like a Captain America take on the whole Rygar thing. But hey, I waited decades for another Rygar game. And, well, okay, I got it real cheap because it was secondhand. That's one of the cool things. PS2 is common enough that you don't really see much for price gouging. It's just so common. So many people had the system, and so many people had a lot of games on the system that, you don't really see the kind of gouging with PS2 that you see with some other systems. GameCube is another story, but we'll talk about that later. Castlevania Curse of Darkness. This is interesting. I got it like, ooh, look, Castlevania on PS2. Wonder what that's like these days. I didn't really know that Castlevania had turned into this anime type thing, and it's an interesting story to say the least, but I still haven't beaten it yet. I'm about 2/3 of the way through the game. Maybe one of these days I should actually finish it. And interestingly enough, it's kind of got RPG elements, so this has been a grinder game for me before, where if I want to listen to a podcast, I'll grind some levels for the innocent devils, so to speak. Complete, Black Label, interesting, da-da-da. Not Symphony of the Night by any means. And there goes the games, avalanching out of the pile like I thought they would. But anyways, slippery cases because they're in such great shape. Lego Batman, pack-in game that came with the PS2 Slim. I got this and found out there was a PS3 version, so I'm torn on whether to keep it, but not for resale. That means you can't resell it. I don't know. Do I really want to play Lego Batman on PS3? The big issue I have with this is there's technical issues with the game. The widescrreen setting doesn't stick. So if you set up your widescreen for it, even though, yeah, of course it's complete. I'm the original owner of it. The widescreen setting doesn't stick. So if you put the thing in widescreen and you play the game and then you turn it off, next time you start up it's going to be back to 4:3 mode. So it's annoying having to constantly flip to widescreen just to play this. It's also annoying to have to push buttons on the controller to get progressive scan, unlike with the GameCube. Psychonauts. Found out about this game on Tech TV back in the day. Again, nowhere near complete, as you can tell by the black and white cover art that I just printed off of my laser printer. Is this the NTSC version? Yes. It's at least it's the NTSC cover art, not PAL. So, interesting game. Very original, very, very original. Back in its day, and unfortunately it didn't sell. I found out about this because this was, I think, GameSpot, not to be confused with GameStop. I think GameSpot.com back then gave it an award at the end of the year for greatest game that no one played. Nowadays, though, it's on PC, so I've tossed around the idea of just getting this on Steam instead of messing with the PS2 version. But I already have the PS2 version, and it wasn't that expensive, so why should I pay a Steam price? And Capcom Classics Collection Volume 2. I found out there was a Volume 2. I was like, let's get that just to be complete. And this one is complete. Got the Namco version on the way eventually, or the Namco Museum on the for PS2 on the way. More Street Fighter and other sorts of games like that. Old school is in session, saving me from having to hunt down some games that I might get gouged for on the cartridge systems. And there's some arcade versions on here too. So that's PlayStation 2. And with just the Slim before I go hooking it back up. So that's PlayStation 2. Still a very viable console even to this day, but unfortunately it is finding its way into the secondhand stores. I often look for the best deals with PS2 versions of games, and the way it works where I am is that all the let's get the fat PS2 as well and finish up that with both of the hardware platform, well, both of the revisions of the hardware on here. It's a little tricky doing this with one hand without having one of these things go careening to the carpet or crashing into the metal bits on the chair. All right. The way PlayStation 2 currently works in my neck of the woods, you go to the secondhand stores and the games for this are everywhere. GameCube is a lot harder to find and usually more expensive. And Xbox is harder to find but not as expensive. I don't know why. Maybe just because original Xbox has issues because people don't have much of a reason to hang on to the games if they're not on the backward compatibility list for the 360, unless they still want to hold on to an original Xbox. So, yeah, usually the platform of choice around here, if you're looking for secondhand games, is going to be PlayStation 2. Those suckers are everywhere, especially sports games. Of course, there are always lots of sports games floating around because of people not being interested in the 1996 NFL season after, well, yeah, so that happens. I find that happens the most with PS2, or the secondhand stores that I visited with all the PS2 games are getting cleaned out by that other game shop that resells. So, especially if they flat price their games and don't try to figure out how much they're worth on eBay and do eBay minus 20% or something like that. Anywho, that is PlayStation 2. I know this is a longer video, but it's a bigger game collection. So we probably won't have this many games to talk about or revisions of hardware ever again. So in this series. So hope you've enjoyed it. Till next time, this is MultimediaJay signing off. Thanks for stopping by.